Have you ever heard of Intel? Well, they're that little semiconductor that happens to be inside our computer. And it's been around for a long time, but it definitely was the trailblazer in getting our computers to start working so much more effectively and rapidly for us. And it's not stopping there. And neither is this Latina that we have, who is a trailblazer in this area of engineering. So I'm very excited. Be excited and be inspired. Welcome to Ask the Latina. My guest today is Isaura Gaeta. She is a senior executive over at Intel and she oversees global security. She works with engineering and she's got a wonderful background. I'm going to let her go ahead and tell you about all that she does at Intel. But first of all, let me introduce her and let's learn more about where she started and how she got to where she is today, which is going to be inspiring. Thank you, Saura, for being with us. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to first get to know more of where you're from and how was school, how you got into the interest level of engineering.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to have this opportunity. So I grew up in Chicago. I was born in Chicago to parents who are originally from Mexico, from Mexico. There, as you probably know, there's a very vibrant Latino community in Chicago. And growing up, I actually didn't learn to speak English until I started kindergarten because in Chicago, all the grocery stores and the church, everything, people speak Spanish. And so I thought that was the language. Um, and I bring this up because when I started elementary school, I was still learning English, but math immediately made sense to me. I just love math and numbers. And so I really gravitated toward math and then later science. So growing up in elementary school, those are the fields, those are the areas that were interesting to me. So naturally going into high school, I was all set. I'm coming in saying, well, I want to go into, some field that has science. And the high school counselors at that time, they were not used to seeing Latinas in technology. And so my high school counselor basically said, well, I don't want to sign your class request to take electronics because you probably will be happier taking home ec and sewing. And so my
Mm.
freshman year, I had to take the classes that he recommended, but I was really firm in my belief that I want to take electronics, I want to take drafting, and I want to apply to Stanford University. Again, he said, oh, you'll never get into Stanford University. You should probably reset your expectations to something like a local university. But that little voice inside me said, I need to prove him wrong. I know I can do it. I have a lot of interest in these areas. Why not? And luckily, I listened to that little voice, that little stubbornness. And I went on to Stanford University and studied electrical engineering, got my bachelor's and my master's, and then went into this field of semiconductor processing and now security. So it's been an exciting ride, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy getting there.
Wow, that is amazing. So you made it happen. Now, how was the transition going from high school to Stanford? What was that like for you?
It was actually difficult, to be quite honest, because my high school was a traditional high school. It was not a college prep. And especially, I'll date myself, but I was growing up in the 1970s, and in that time, we didn't have access to calculus and a lot of advanced physics and things like that. So I was taking a lot of the basic classes. I get accepted into Stanford, and then I realized that all of my classmates, they've already had calculus and they've already had advanced physics and things like that. And so I'm really learning and trying to compete with people who are very well prepared. It was very intimidating. And I started to question whether I belonged. But luckily, there was a small, growing community of Latinos at Stanford. And I found them, they found me. And within that there was a student group called the Stanford Society of Chicano and Latino Engineers and Scientists. And that community helped me feel, yes, we can do this. It's more than just me. Um, and it gave me that confidence to keep going, and plugged away, studied really hard, and eventually, things started to come to me, but it was difficult at the beginning. Like I said, I was intimidated by the preparation of a lot of the other students, but this community helped me to keep going and to build my confidence that I do belong and I can do this.
Oh, that's great. It does make a difference to have a community, definitely. And it's a good point that when you go to college, whenever someone goes to college to kind of look for those communities, I think now they've evolved a lot more than when we were both in college. But I'm glad to hear that, it's something that's definitely important. Now, you chose electrical engineering, and can I ask you, why did you choose electrical engineering?
So I like a lot of different fields. I liked chemistry, I liked physics, I liked mathematics and computers. And within electrical engineering, there is a specialty that was the semiconductor processing. And this is basically, if you think about a computer, the chips, how they're made, they start with silicon. And it's a series of steps. It's almost like a recipe that you build in order to produce transistors that ultimately are these chips. And so
Hmm.
that opportunity to have chemistry and physics and computer modeling all in one place was really exciting to me. And that's why I went into electrical engineering, so that I could study that. I didn't quite know that's what I wanted until my graduate degree. My undergrad was still more general classes, but I did take a lot of internships. And that's something I recommend everybody that can get internships as early as possible, because that helps to sort of shape the where do you go with your degree. As you know, industrial engineering is very broad, electrical engineering is very broad, but each summer experience gives you a feeling of what you like and what you don't like. And that helps you tailor and pick the classes that are more interesting for you. And so in my master's program, it was a focus on semiconductor processing and logic design, which ultimately got me into the Intel corporations of the world, the chip producing companies.
Wow. And no, that's great point you said as far as the internship and where it brought you to Intel, and that's awesome. And of course, it's an evolving area. The whole technology there, and like you said, electrical engineering. There's so many different areas you can go into. What is a typical day for you? I mean, you've been in so many different areas of Intel, and just tell us about what those experiences were like and what you've learned from it and what you liked. What is it like to be in that role?
I'll explain what it's like in a typical day in two parts.
Okay.
First, let me describe when I first started. So, as an engineer right out of college and being involved in creating semiconductor processes, I spent a lot of day in the fab, which is this fabrication area. It's like doing experiments all day. You're wearing a bunny suit because you're trying to protect the product from any kind of contamination that you might be bringing in. Any particles could land on a device and ruin it. So wearing a bunny suit in the fab, running experiments, looking at the results. Some of our experiments worked, some of them didn't. And then you
Mm.
kind of scratch your head and say, what am I going to try next? So it was really like solving puzzles. It was a lot of fun working with teams. I would do part of the process. Team members would do different parts. We get together, discuss the results. Some of the results, we would share in conferences. I'd be able to present them in conferences outside of my company. And so that time period was a lot of experimentation, hands-on, a lot of learning and growing. Now, fast forward many, many, many years, I'm in a role in management and leadership now. And basically, my role is I have a very large group, and we're setting the direction and delivering results for Intel products in the market and future products. So, a lot of my time now as a leader is developing my team, ensuring that they have the skills and the resources that they need to deliver, negotiating with my peers in terms of projects and deadlines, and how are we going to, solve some of the tough problems that we might encounter.
Right.
And so a lot more meetings now than before, and a lot more higher level decisions that need to be made. But one of the things I still enjoy the most in my current role is talking to people and talking to my direct reports and also mentoring others. I think that continues my growing and learning, and I really enjoy that. So my job is a little different than when I first started, but
Yeah.
it's still very, very fun and interesting.
That sounds exciting. And we hear a lot in the news about these microchips, like for instance in automotive, how difficult it is and putting things behind. I imagine in this industry where you're in, Intel goes into everything, and not just computers, correct? So in this field, you can really kind of go into different industries. Am I correct? And that's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that a Latina should also open up and say, hey, you could go. Intel is a wonderful company, of course, but just take a look at all the other areas that we just hear in the news that we need. We need these pieces. We need someone to understand how this technology works. And
Yeah, that's a great point. And let me give you some examples of why this is so important. So, when you think about a computer, the central processing unit is called the CPU. That's really the brains of the computer, and that's one of the strong areas that Intel's been focused in. Um, in the early days, like if you think of the first rocket that went to the moon, there was a certain amount of electronics that powered that. Today, in your cell phone, anyone on the listening today, your cell phone has a lot more technology and power than what was on that first rocket to the moon. That just shows you in those short years, we have been advancing technology and shrinking it so that it can fit into a device. I had the opportunity to work on a technology which at the time was called Centrino, but it's really the first wireless technology. Many people that are in high school and college today may not remember or may not have experience. Before, when you used a computer, you had to be connected to the internet through a cable, an Ethernet cable. You couldn't go very far. You had to be connected. And nowadays, you can be, your laptop, you could even be sitting on the beach and typing into your laptop. On your phone,
mhm,
you could be
mhm,
anywhere in the world and be connected. And that technology, Centrino, is something that I was participating in. And to know that I played a small role in enabling us to be disconnected from wires so that we could be connected anywhere in the world. So that satisfaction that you get having worked on products like that is, one of the fun reasons why to be involved in engineering. But then taking it one step further, why should Latinas go into engineering? And the reason is there's so many difficult problems, so many interesting difficult problems to solve. And in order to do that, you need a variety of inputs. You need different perspectives, people that come with different life experiences, and putting them all together to tackle these difficult problems leads to better results, sometimes faster results. And so, as a Latina, my unique perspective, and I can point to a couple of examples where I saw things that other people in my group, the other male engineers who maybe grew up in traditional kind of backgrounds in the US, didn't see. But because of my background, I brought them up. I, led us through, and we solved problems. So that diversity of thought, diversity of experience leads to better products and better engineering outcomes.
wow. That's so true. And I'm glad you said that because there is a lot of your experience as a Latina that you brought to, um, to this wonderful innovation that we have that continues to evolve, and we don't know where it's going to take us, but right now it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time to be in technology, and I think for a Latina that's in high school, just considering where this is definitely the waves of the future, and everyone having their own cell phone. I imagine that you could definitely agree with that. The flexibility of being able to connect with even a family member in another country is really an amazing thing that we could not do when we were children. I know that's one of the things that was very difficult, and now we are so grateful that we have that. So that's great. So looking back, if you were now with all the experience you had, and you went back to being 18, what is, or 17, whichever, what advice would you give yourself, having gone through such a wonderful, journey that you had in your life? But there's someone advice. What's the biggest advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, so probably, to know that you can do it, to have that confidence that you are going to get there. And, I mentioned earlier that I work in CPUs, and that I connected that CPU to something that to me has been very meaningful, and I call it commit, persist, and unite.
Oh, okay.
So what I mean by that is what I've learned is commit. Commit to be your best self every day, to show up prepared, to lean in, to really engage. Persist. Persist despite setbacks, because there's going to be many setbacks along the way, but you got to keep going. And then unite, because you can't do it alone. There's a community of other Latinas and Latinos, women who might be in engineering, and that community really helps you power through together. And so that CPU, if I could go back to my 18-year-old days and tell myself, just keep going and persist and,
Mhm.
find that community that's going to help you get through, then I probably would have felt a lot more comfortable through that journey.
That's fantastic advice. And that is true. You're persistent. That you didn't give up and you had that focus to go to Stanford is amazing. It's great, and it's something that definitely a Latina should learn from. That don't give up. Everything is possible, and just focus on it, and don't let any the obstacles might be there, but there's always a way to get out around it. So, especially if you're focused on what you want to do, that's wonderful. Is there a kind of a special quote that you ever heard about that you can resonate with everything that you've had your experience that you like when you might have a day and you look at a quote and that happens to be something that that really just resonates with you?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always hold true is how to interact with people, and respect is something really important to me. Treating all people with respect. I mean, at my workplace, I haven't been inside the office for a while, but saying hello to the people in the cafeteria and thank you to the janitorial staff. Everybody is important. We all play an important role, treating everyone with respect. And so there's a quote from Benito Juarez: Respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. And that's something that really resonates with me, that in my interactions now as a leader, there may be times I disagree with people or that people are doing things that are not correct, but I always treat them with respect. I will be very direct and help people to learn and put them on the right path, but I will always do it with respect, because we all are trying our best in this world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I love that quote. That's so true. It is so important. No matter where we are in our path, and we always reach back and remember to lift others up. Definitely. So thank you. I really appreciate your time. It was wonderful. That was one thing I did want to ask you. Did you have a mentor when you were in high school, or as you went through college? And if you didn't, what kind of mentor would you wanted to have in your life?
Unfortunately, I didn't have a mentor in my first 15, 20 years of my career. And, I would have loved to see more Latinas in the tech areas that could, show me the path, that I could see someone ahead of me that I could just follow their footsteps. Um, Later in my career, I did have mentors and people from different groups, men, different nationalities, that reached out and tried to give me advice and help me. But what I did in my earlier years, instead of having that mentor, it's really that community, other
Mm.
people that are going through that experience with me, that we could talk about things and share common experiences. And I think that was just as helpful because I didn't have a mentor.
Wow, that is good. I'm glad to hear that the community is still a very important part, and we definitely need to have more. We need to realize we can reach out too, and I think that's a great advice. Thank you so much. Well, this has been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you, to learn about your journey. I know you're touching on Latina's life, listening to this, and and understanding that there's so much opportunity out there, and your journey alone is definitely inspiring. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Isaura.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, this concludes our episode of Asa Latina. I hope that you'll join us in the next one. Thank you.